What's poppin', y'all? The high end of West Coast gangster rap groups in the 1980s was centered around N.W.A, the Compton, California collective that consisted of Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, MC Ren, DJ Yella, members Arabian Prince early on, as well as star Eazy-E, who also ran Ruthless Records. The still label N.W.A released their official debut album Straight Outta Compton in 1988. Less than a year later, Ruthless Records put out their fourth release from solo rapper the D.O.C, the platinum-selling album No One Can Do It Better on August 1st, 1989. His California-sounding hip-hop project came complete with bangers like It's Funky Enough, The Formula, and the D.O.C and the Doctor. It was understandable at the time to assume that the D.O.C was another new talent entering the rap game from Southern California, especially after Ruthless Records had already pushed out 3 consecutive successful albums, all from California. First was J.J. Fad with the Supersonic album on July 5th, 88, that had surpassed gold. Second up was N.W.A Straight Outta Compton, a little over a month later, that was triple platinum. And then just over 5 weeks after N.W.A's album came the Eazy-E album Easy Does It on September 16th, that hit it big with double platinum. In the New York, California-dominated rap industry of the 80s, imagine the looks on fans' faces in the summer of '89 when the newest hard-hitting lyricist from Los Angeles record label Ruthless Records was not coming straight out of Compton or anywhere in California, but Dallas, Texas. It isn't like the D.O.C was pretending not to be from Texas. It had more to do with his close proximity to Dr. Dre and Eazy-E. But before all that happened, the D.O.C's entrance into the music game was with the Fila Fresh crew he joined as a teenager from his hometown of Dallas, Texas, back when his stage name was Doc T. Along with members Fresh K and Dr. Rock, the Fila Fresh crew, they got close to N.W.A's Dr. Dre during the days of Macola Records, the Los Angeles-based vinyl record pressing plant and record label that their 8-song EP called Toughest Man Alive came out on. Macola Records was also a starting ground for Miami rap pioneers 2 Live crew, DJ Muggs' early group 783 before he co-founded Cypress Hill, N.W.A associate The Egyptian Lover, and Dr. Dre's original group, the world-class Wrecking Crew. So what did it take for the D.O.C to venture out to L.A. to engage in the music game when his mother was pushing him to go in the direction of the military for career stability? When my mother came out with me with this army stuff, I was in Texas. I was living at my sister's house, and I got on my knees next to her couch, and I prayed as hard as a human being can pray. I asked God, please let me do this. This is what I want to do. If you would allow me to do this, I promise you that when I get there, I will let everybody know that it was you, not me. Then Dre's number pops up on me, and I call the guy, and the rest of this is sort of history. Now, when my album came out, if you know my album cover, it's me standing in front of a statue of Jesus. The statue reads, King of Kings, Lord of Lords. Well, when I saw that statue, I was uplifted, and I decided that it was how I was going to begin my testimony. This is how I'm going to start to tell them it was him, it wasn't me. But the kids thought I was talking about me. They wore it on their rings. They wore it in their hair. They had the trench coats with airbrushing on the back of it. I think at some point it got to be too much. I was like, well, shoot, maybe it is me. Maybe I am the King of Kings, Lord of Lords around this bitch. After Fila Fresh crew disbanded in the late 80s, the D.O.C moved out west to Los Angeles and became a close acquaintance with not just N.W.A's members, but also Ruthless Records, which he signed to and began using his D.O.C moniker. The D.O.C was definitely a team player on Ruthless, contributing memorable lyrics to N.W.A's Straight Outta Compton album and making his own featured appearance with his opening verse on the song Parental Discretion is Advised. The D.O.C continued proving to rap and lyricist enthusiast that he was putting his pen game into action on Eazy-E's Easy Does It album and serving as a co-writer on Keep Watching. With the D.O.C's heavy writing involvement on Straight Outta Compton, what was that whole process like and what music was inspiring their spirit of competition at the time? When Dre and I started making the Straight Outta Compton record, every day on our way to the studio, we would listen to the It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. Not every other day, not once a week. For 3 months, it was every effing morning. Every effing morning, we were listening to different songs off that record. That's why the Straight Outta Compton drums drove so hard, and it had the feeling like you were in the ride itself. What Chuck D and them was doing back then is what N.W.A came from. Not the N.W.A before I got here, but the N.W.A after I got here. There's a distinct difference. If you listen to the art, you can tell. Dre is just one of those unique producers that create the scene within the art for you to create to. I've always said that Dre is more like a film producer than a music producer because he sees the complete picture before we do. The guy is just a sick maniac, one of, if not the dopest of all time. Just how well did the D.O.C's own debut do? The Dr. Dre produced No One Can Do It Better had critics on its side and managed to peak at number 20 on the Billboard 200 for 2 weeks in a row. His highly respected first full-length offering also reached number 1 on the top hip-hop albums charts for 2 weeks and gave him 2 number 1 hit songs on the rap songs charts in terms of It's Funky Enough and the D.O.C. and the Doctor. By 1994, No One Can Do It Better was certified platinum. Making the music wasn't the only lucrative and fulfilling part of the D.O.C.'s career. He also hit the road and performed live in front of packed crowds, sharing stages with many of the largest hip-hop acts during the end of the 80s. There was a moment in the Straight Outta Compton tour when it was the point when we went through Dallas, Texas, my home. Now, because this is a tour with LL Cool J, Big Daddy Kane, and Run DMC and De La Soul and N.W.A. Now, my record hadn't even come out yet, but N.W.A. allowed me 7 minutes at the beginning of their show just to get out and warm the crowd up for them. And when I took the stage that night in Dallas, I got more of an applause than anybody that was on that tour. Just a year prior, I was at a show, and later I was on stage with those guys, and the crowd was losing their minds because it was me. And in that moment, my mother was there. It was out of a dream. It's probably the best night of my life, as far as the music industry is concerned. But things weren't all good in 1989 for the D.O.C., especially when a life-changing event took place that would take the D.O.C. from becoming a top contender for top 10 rappers to the greatest rapper that never was. 5 months after No One Can Do It Better hit, the D.O.C. was also hit up in a near-fatal car crash after driving home from a party. He was dozing off while under the influence of alcohol and cannabis and fell asleep behind the wheel, leading to him and his vehicle veering off the freeway. Unfortunately, the D.O.C. wasn't wearing a seatbelt at the time, and he was flung right through the rear window, with his body barreling into a tree face first. The painful accident that smashed his larynx forced him to need 21 hours of plastic surgery during his 2.5-week stay in the hospital. When it was all said and done, the D.O.C., a man who was rapping for a living, could not speak at all for a month. Don't forget, he was on arguably the hottest LA rap label ever until Dr. Dre later came with Death Row Records and Aftermath. To make matters worse, the D.O.C. was left with a much raspier voice that paled in comparison to how he sounded previously. During an interview with Vlad TV, the D.O.C. discusses his time spent with the legendary producer Dr. Dre, including not just the ups but also the downs during their working relationship. The D.O.C. talked about his fallout with Dr. Dre primarily from a financial standpoint. Me and Dre, we have a falling out every couple of years, and they're always monumental. That falling out precipitated Helter Skelter. It was because everybody had money, cars, clothes, and I didn't. And I charged him up. We got into it behind that, and he let me know some real truths about business. And I wasn't prepared to hear it because I was still floundering. I can spend money anytime I want. I still live in the best houses, drive the flyest cars, but none of it's mine. I was using Dre's money. If I needed some money, I'd just say, hey, bro, I need some money. That gets a little old, but I was driving his Ferrari everywhere. Wherever he lived, I lived. It was a great life. I lived with Dre most of my life. I lived with Snoop for a time because me and Dre was feuding. Otherwise, I'd be living with Dre. There was a point in time when the D.O.C. had to not only cope with the destruction of his valuable voice, but also deal with being locked up behind bars. How did he deal with both of these things at the same time? One of the deals is that the accident that happened to me in that movie took my voice. It was taken from me. And for a quarter century, my vocal cords didn't work. I got arrested about 2 years ago, and I spent a year locked up. While I was locked up, by some blessing, those vocal cords were starting to move again on their own. And from there, I could manipulate my vocal cords to make a solid tone again. So I have a voice again. It's not anywhere near strong, and it isn't comfortable. It feels like putting your shoes on the wrong foot and walking because I haven't used those muscles in freaking 25 years. But I have been working on it, and I'm trying to build them, slowly and surely. I'm going to make new art. I believe that God gave me that blessing as a sign to tell me that it's time to start talking. It has nothing to do with rapping or being the greatest rapper again. I've already done that. It has nothing to do with making these magnificent platinum records. I've already done that. I think it was given back to me because it's time for someone to start talking. What became the next act of the D.O.C.'s character after the incredible highs from his debut album and the drastic lows of his accident He was able to pick up the pieces and put them back together by continuing to write lyrics for N.W.A. after Ice Cube left the group and went solo. The D.O.C. contributed all of the songwriting, except for Just Don't Bite It and Commercial, and some minor vocals to N.W.A.'s 1990 EP, 100 Miles and Running, as well as in their final album, Niggas for Life. But his stay at Ruthless Records was running out, as he would end up departing the label that had been his home in 1991, along with Dre, where he signed with Dr. Dre's newest venture, Death Row Records. He was a key writer on Dre's solo debut album, The Chronic, adding on to the songs Nothing But a G Thing, Lil Ghetto Baby, A Nigga With a Gun, Lyrical Gangbangin', and Bitches Ain't Shit, along with appearing on the skit The $20 Sack Pyramid. The D.O.C. also put in work on Snoop Dogg's freshman album Doggy Style and put forth some vocals on the track Serial Killer. D.O.C. continued forward and onward as a ghostwriter for other songs for Dre, Snoop Dogg, and Eazy-E, but as some of his husky voice was restored, the time eventually came for the D.O.C. to record a follow-up album. But this time, it wouldn't be with Dr. Dre in tow the production tip. In fact, the D.O.C. left Death Row Records altogether in '94 after disputes over not getting paid for his work, a recurring theme we've seen from Death Row artists, and he relocated to Atlanta for a fresh start. These brand new sonic compositions were all created by Erotic D and the D.O.C. himself. Another big noticeable change was that the Doctor of the Microphone wasn't releasing his album under the Doctor of Production this time around when he released his second album, Helter Skelter. He signed a 6-figure contract with the Warner Music Group label imprint, Giant Records, and put out Helter Skelter on January 23, 1996. Unfortunately, it didn't hit as hard as his first release, and he wouldn't put out a third project until 7 years later in 2003, called D.O.C., which reunited him musically with Dre, MC Ren, Snoop Dogg, and Ice Cube, who all added on. There hasn't been a complete D.O.C. album ever since. He would resurface during the creation of Dr. Dre's Compton album that was treated as the soundtrack to the N.W.A. biopic film Straight Outta Compton. This album would also feature the young rapper Justice that the D.O.C. discovered back home in Dallas. But aside from appearing on The Games, the documentary 2.5 album in 2015, there hasn't been too much noise being made by Justice, and we haven't seen anything since. I did an entire video on him. But who says that a rap legend can't make a creative transition and push his pen in the direction of writing songs for a movie musical in Australia? And that's exactly what the D.O.C. did for a project called Carmen before the pandemic started changing everything. One of the talented people that helped make this happen was Erykah Badu, who he has a child with. Erykah called me and she said that there are some people that are interested in talking to you about a movie. I was like, great. And she said it's a musical. And I was like, a musical? She was like, yeah, they know about your voice. They said it's a small part, but your voice works well for the character, and you have to do a song. Can you write a song? Of course, I can write a song. I wrote it and recorded it, and they loved it. And so now I'm down under, shooting my first movie, and it's pretty wicked. But the opportunity, I'm also shooting a documentary this year, so it gave me an opportunity to spend a couple of days rubbing elbows with you Australian people and bringing my own cameras here. There's also talk in 2021 about the D.O.C. making a formal return to the microphone, which we didn't end up witnessing that year. And his frequent producer, Erotic D, made an appearance on Conversations with Chad podcast and proclaimed that they're bouncing between a few different titles for a project. It's so strange to see how underappreciated the D.O.C.'s contribution to hip-hop music have been, especially when counting all of those classic albums that his name's been associated with, and how he was on a trajectory to be one of the best artists to come out of a West Coast label or rappers of all time. But even though the D.O.C. wasn't able to transform the trouble caused by his car accident into stardom like how Kanye West did leading up to The College Dropout, the D.O.C. proved that his pen was definitely still up there, writing music for many songs that people are enjoying across the world. But it's always a story of what if, especially with someone that was this talented. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for watching. Peace.